Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, June 4th, 2021, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the 2022 Senate elections in the upcoming midterm election year. And this is going to be, and has been, a continuing monthly series where I will be releasing a video updating you on the 2022 electoral projections for the Senate elections from my YouTube channel. Now, the reason why I want to do this is because I want to track the races over time. I want to see how much they've changed from the beginning of 2021 all the way through November of 2022. Many things are going to change dramatically in a number of these races, and I do expect these ratings to change sometimes for better or for worse for both political parties, but all in all, we should expect this map to be very different than the one in November, or potentially nearly the same. And I know that's a wide range, that's giving you, every realm of possibility here, but American politics is simply like that. We could predict the election a year and a half in advance, but as of right now, I'm just going to be focusing on what it would be if the election was held today. And that's how all of my predictions are, essentially, if I was to pit these two candidates against each other, or these two parties against each other on the national level, on the Senate level, local, governor, etc. That's what I'm working with, what it would be if the election was held today. So, since it is June of 2021, we don't have the best depiction of what 2022 is going to be like. We don't know how serious or not so serious COVID-19 will be for the rest of the country. And while many states are becoming, very much good safe havens for COVID-19, they haven't directly given us a set deadline or a point in time in which we will see fully opened up states. There are exceptions. There is Texas, there's Florida, there are some other Republican states. But on the national level, we are still very much considered to be in a pandemic. It's at a point where, even though you are vaccinated, there still are some restrictions that you might have that you didn't have prior to the pandemic. And until those are fully relaxed, we don't know entirely how much COVID restrictions will take a role on 2022 voting, on voting by mail, on extended voting hours, whatever it might be. We don't exactly know. So keep in mind that this prediction is going to be considering every circumstance that we're in right now and applying it to the 2022 midterm elections. But in a year and a half from now, COVID-19 might be a thing of the past, at least for the United States. Obviously not on the international level, but that's a discussion for an entirely other video. So our Senate map puts us in this position where 9 Democrats are safe. And unfortunately, I don't know why, but our map here isn't updating as quickly as I wish it would. It's not showing us our total numbers, so I'll just add them all at the end and tell you the final number, so you're going to have to listen to that near the end. But right now we have 9 seats for the Democrats that are considered to be safe seats. So what does this exactly mean? Well, I use the safe characterization to essentially say that a candidate in this race will likely win by 15 points higher, higher than 15 points. If they're in a position where they're winning by 16, 17, 18, 19, you would want to rate it as safe. And the Democratic Party might have 9, but the Republican Party also has some safe states as well. I think that we all run through these motions whenever you're making your own prediction or you're just looking through my videos, because there are safe states for both political parties. Essentially, these are the states that are very solid for one party or another. So right now, the Republicans are at 14, Democrats are at 9. I know adding it all does seem a little bit weird, but by the end of it, I will show you the final result and tell you the final numbers. So bear with me right now. Unfortunately, the website doesn't seem to be responding too well, but that's entirely out of my control, and I do apologize for that. But 14-9, essentially what we know right now is that Republicans are pulling ahead. Right now, we would be in a position where Republicans are just seemingly doing better because of these safe states. But when it comes down to these 11 toss-up states, there actually aren't that many that are actually true toss-ups. And what I mean by that is many of these states will likely be decided by likely margins. That means anywhere between 5 and 15%, not a toss-up state per se, meaning that it's, going to go back and forth, but still competitive, still within reach for the opposition party, but it would take a lot more than just a traditional toss-up state than a traditional swing state. So for the Democrats, they have a few of those. They had the state of Nevada. That's a state where I believe the Democratic Party will win somewhere around 5 to 6 points. I don't think it's going to be a deafening margin, but I also don't think the Democrats are going to be, number one, blown out, nor do I think that the Republicans will expand off Donald Trump's Donald Trump's percentage in that state in the 2020 election. It's still going to be difficult to outrun the president, who made some pretty, noticeable gains in the state of Nevada amongst Hispanic voters. Moving on. Looking at the rest of the country, you have Colorado, another state that actually shifted towards the left relative to 2016, as most of the country did, but by a pretty considerable margin. One of the largest swings in the nation. Hillary Clinton won the state by 4.9%. Joe Biden won the state by 13.5%. So a very significant change in the state of Colorado, all the way towards the Democratic Party. Now, these are the only two states that I would deem to be likely for the Democrats. That means the rest are either going to be lean, tilt, or in the Republican column. For Republicans, they do have some of their own likely states that will boost their numbers, and it'll show you in just a moment. So looking at this, Republicans have likely states across the United States from the Midwest all the way down to the South. So the first likely state that I'm going to characterize for the GOP is the state of Florida. And I know what you're thinking. Florida is always a swing state. Why is it in this position where Florida is all of a sudden considered to be a likely state for the GOP? Well, first things first, President Trump's performance in 2020 was pretty impressive. If you're looking at some of the shifts relative to 2016, Donald Trump ran up the margins in Miami-Dade County and Broward County and a number of surrounding areas, largely because Donald Trump improved amongst Hispanic voters, improved amongst minority voters in general. In addition, 2018, despite it being a Democrat plus 8 national year, Democrats still lost in the state of Florida, a completely winnable race, but Bill Nelson ended up flopping. In addition, this same Senate seat from 2016, you can see Marco Rubio won here by 7.7%. On the same ballot, Donald Trump won by 1.3%. So essentially, Marco Rubio had around 6% of this electorate say, I'm voting for an opposition candidate to Donald Trump, whether that be a libertarian, whether that be an independent, write-in, Green Party, or even Hillary Clinton, and still voted for Marco Rubio. He significantly reduced the margin in Miami-Dade County. Patrick Murphy still won it by 10 points, but if Joe Biden was only able to win Miami-Dade County by around 6 points, and Donald Trump lost Miami-Dade County in 2016 by 30 points, Marco Rubio absolutely is winning Miami-Dade County in 2022 if current trends hold. So looking at the state of Florida, this is why I'm characterizing it as likely for the GOP, but things certainly can change. We also have two other states, one of which, I am considering moving out. I don't know exactly. These are the states of Iowa and Ohio, as I've just characterized, but the state of Ohio is kind of throwing me for a loop because I know Josh Mandel as a Trump candidate can win, absolutely can win, but the question is by how much. I use 5 to 15 as a very large range because that's typically how it is. I mean, it's not super close, but it's also not super large, and since we aren't working with more than 4 colors, I decided that that would be the best numbering system for the likely margin. But Ohio, I'm not too confident in Josh Mandel's election performance. He dropped out in 2018. He, is in a position where he already lost one of these Senate races, and he's gone full off the edge for President Trump here, and is going to, very big extremes in order to win this primary. And I don't know if that will alienate too many voters, because while President Trump won the state, Josh Mandel is trying to be Trump and more. He's trying to go even further to the right. He's going so far as taking a mask and burning it for the public to see. I mean, what Josh Mandel is doing is being pro-Trump to the furthest realm of possibility, and is trying to win a Senate race. So if he ends up the nominee, maybe that prediction, maybe that characterization will change, because Josh Mandel just seems to be someone who isn't necessarily the best person to appeal to independent and Democratic voters. But that isn't necessarily required to win in Ohio, but I will say that is something that I do think is detrimental to his campaign if he ends up the nominee. But as of right now, Ohio, Iowa, 2 states I will characterize under the likely column, which leaves us with 6 states to go through: New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. So let's go ahead and take a look. Based off this map, we are working with the same swing states from the 2020 election. At least many of them are the exact same. If you're looking at the map, looking at some of the closest states, you have Georgia, boom, a swing state. Arizona, boom, a Senate swing state. Wisconsin, another one. Pennsylvania, another one. New Hampshire, another one. That's 5. North Carolina, that's 6. So you have all 6 of them in 2022 in the toss-up column, all of which were toss-ups in 2020 and also 2016. So it is quite interesting to see some of these states have been moderately large victories for Republicans and Democrats in the past, but have since moved down into the toss-up column on both sides. Right now, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, surprisingly, 2 states that were part of the blue wall for decades, have 2 Republican senators, and Georgia and Arizona, which hadn't voted for Democrats since the 90s until Joe Biden, have 2 Democrats up. It's quite interesting, just a very flipped dynamic from what we're used to. So my first characterization of the evening is the states of Arizona and Georgia. Now, the reason why I'm characterizing both of these states as lean Democratic states is because I can't find too much strong Republican opposition in either of the two states. Currently, you have Herschel Walker in Georgia, who's floating the possibility of running for United States Senate, and then you have Kelly Ward and other Republicans in the state of Arizona that are very extreme. I mean, essentially, what happened here after President Trump left office is that pro-Trump candidates are becoming more and more popular. They're becoming more easily nominated in the Republican primary, and that's great for Republicans, but that isn't a winning strategy, especially in these two states, which just flipped for the first time since the 1990s. And for Donald Trump and the GOP to not recognize that the Trump-like candidate failed in Georgia three times actually, President Trump, David Perdue, and Kelly Loeffler. And then you have Martha McSally, whatever it might be. All signs seem to indicate that Trump-like candidates won't perform super well in Georgia or Arizona, yet the only notable Republicans who are considering running are Trump Republicans. I'm not hopeful for their chances there, which is why I'm characterizing it as lean for the Democratic Party. But the Republican Party also has some of their own states in their column. Actually, what we're going to be looking at here is the state of North Carolina. Now, this is a changing in rating because I believe North Carolina could end up becoming a little bit closer. I mean, looking at the margin of victory in 2016, it doesn't seem like it would be. Richard Burr actually is surprisingly one of the few senators who voted to convict President Trump and also voted for the January 6th commission, which I found to be actually did not vote for the January 6th commission, but did not vote against it after saying he would vote against it. Now, North Carolina is quite tricky. I mean, I don't know exactly, based off where it is right now, what the exact margin will be, but I would say probably is around 1-2 points. And I think that at this point it could narrow down to less than 1%. Currently, Joe Biden is popular. The Democratic Party is approved of more than the GOP. The Democrats are still riding that honeymoon phase as someone is entering into office. In this case, of course, Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress, but things certainly can change. I do expect North Carolina to revert back to its traditional Republican status, but again, predictions are made is if the election was held today, here's what would happen, and that's what I'm thinking in North Carolina. So right now, looking at the results in previous elections, signs sort of indicate North Carolina will be a little bit larger of a margin, but again, if the election was held today, what would happen? I honestly believe that looking at it, the Republicans with an open seat would be fighting in territory. The Democrats are certainly going to try to target super heavily, and that this state will be one of the closer ones of the 2022 election season. Now, I'm going to go out and say that I do believe the Democratic Party will retain control of the United States Senate in 2022, the same way the Republicans did in 2018. I think it'll be an opposite. Republicans gain seats in the House, Democrats gain seats in the United States Senate, and it isn't hard to see that. I mean, Wisconsin isn't, a state that I would say is immediately on the pickup list for the Democratic Party, but it certainly needs to be talked about. Pennsylvania as well. I mean, looking at 2018, you're looking at a ballot in which Republicans gained seats in the Senate and Democrats did well. And I think Democrats will also do well in 2022. New Hampshire did not have a Senate race. Let's do a flashback here to see how much Maggie Hassan won by. Can you guess the margin? It was 0.1%. So what we're working with here is recent elections for Democrats in the Rust Belt and also in New Hampshire on the presidential level of Joe Biden winning there. But in the most recent Senate elections, you'll notice Democrats also did well in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but New Hampshire, not so much. Now, Maggie Hassan is someone who is now representing the state of New Hampshire. I wouldn't necessarily say she's an electoral juggernaut, but she did defeat one in 2016. She defeated Kelly Ayotte, who had won her last election with 60% of the vote. So this was a pretty significant uptick in support for the Democratic Party relative to the 2010 election performance. And I do think that this is a pretty good showing considering it was one of the few pickups for Democrats in the 2016 presidential election. And just looking at New Hampshire, that's the first state I'm going to characterize. I think that Maggie Hassan will likely do well. I think she will win by a lean margin, but a lot of speculation is being fueled into the state because potentially Chris Sununu could be running for United States Senate in the state of New Hampshire. And if he does, that rating is bound to change. I mean, you're looking at a state that loves the governor, but also approves of the senator in a very pivotal and polarized year and a very pivotal and polarized time currently. So it's really hard to gauge, but I do think that the factor of the incumbency certainly will be helpful, not helpful necessarily enough to be the sole reason why she's dragged across the finish line, but I do think that it might be enough to help boost her chances of victory, which I think are already pretty significant right now. But if Chris Sununu does decide to run, things could dramatically change, and it would take a further look at the Senate race in the state of New Hampshire. So that leaves two Senate seats, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and I'm going to tell you, at least for Pennsylvania, I think it'll go to the Democrats by a lean margin. Now, the reason for that is a lot of the data has been telling me the exact same thing. Looking at the state of Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey didn't exactly win by a large amount. Katie McGinty and Joe Sestak in 2010, both of those races were 100% winnable. They were simply, just bad choices by the Democratic Party in a number of these races that ultimately made them lose the Senate races in both 2010 and 2016. I mean, Pat Toomey never won by an overwhelming large margin. Pat Toomey wasn't the incumbent. I mean, he was working in an open race. And now that he's retiring, I do think that Democrats have an ample opportunity with either Conor Lamb or John Fetterman to pick up that Senate race. And the final seat, the state of Wisconsin, which I normally characterize as tilt for the GOP, I'm actually going to be moving over into the tilt Democratic column. And I know that seems a little extreme, at least for some of you viewers, but I do want you to understand that Wisconsin isn't necessarily a state that I believe that Ron Johnson or a Republican nominee will perform too well in. Ron Johnson obviously has his reservations about running for Senate in 2022, and it seems as if his personal reason is the fact that he promised to his constituents that he personally does not want to be there and potentially he might lose. But he's receiving a lot of pressure, largely because I'm viewing this as the GOP frantically, begging Ron Johnson to run in this Senate race, asking him time and time and time again, having the president speak to him, telling him, run, have him in this race, because they know without him, Wisconsin is going to be much more competitive. But I do think that it's going to be competitive regardless. Ron Johnson seems to be a more outdated version of some of these other senators. I mean, he's a Republican from a swing state who's probably one of the most extreme ones. He's not nearly as moderate as some of these other Republicans in swing states, and certainly seems to be thinking it's going to work for him, but he's only been elected twice. And, if he chooses to run for re-election, a lot of his history, especially in the past half year at that, will be brought up, will be used against him, and he will be scrutinized for it. So I want to see what happens in Wisconsin. If Ron Johnson decides not to run, I will stand by this position, maybe even move it further left. But as it stands currently, I wouldn't be hopeful if I was a Republican on Ron Johnson's campaign due to his, big level of outspokenness. In addition, he hasn't really offered, too much of a reason as to why he would be running for United States Senate. But if he chooses to do so, Wisconsin might take a second look, but honestly speaking, I think Ron Johnson or a Republican nominee would likely lose the Senate race by a narrow margin. I'm not going to say that they're going to lose by 10, 20 points or even 5 points, but I do think that less than 1% is enough, at least where it stands currently and where the United States is and where the constituents of Wisconsin are in terms of approving of Joe Biden or not, approving of Ron Johnson based off the election data. Again, a number of things go into these predictions, but if the election was held today, I will say that the Democrats, I think, would be at 52 Senate seats and the Republicans would be at 48. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I don't think the end screen is going to come up, unfortunately. I thought it was going to, but, on the screen, there's actually, it's not on the screen. I think it's loading right now, so we're going to get there in just a moment. But essentially, I just want to say that there's a video on the screen. There's a playlist that you can watch, and if you would like to subscribe, it's on the left. Also, I will be going back to my regular recording area tomorrow, so I'm really excited for that. I can finally record videos twice a day, and I can also be talking to you guys in a different setting than before, because right now, as you can see, the Wi-Fi takes a very long time to load, and I think now is the perfect time for me to go home and get back to my traditional recording. Also, I'm working on an election night. There's a lot to say. Sorry about prolonging the video. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.